She saved a wounded pup from the biting cold. The Alpha King arrived, searching for his lost son. The forest lay in silence, a vast expanse of white under the pale light of a waning moon. Snow drifted like whispers across frozen branches, and each step Leora took left a fleeting mark that the wind quickly erased. Her cloak, thick but worn, clung to her frame, shielding her from the relentless bite of winter, yet her hands trembled from more than just cold. She carried water, herbs, and bandages, small offerings for lives she might save, lives too often overlooked in the harsh wilderness. Her eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the forest floor. The trees were skeletal against the dark sky, their branches twisting like the fingers of some ancient spirit. Every sound, a cracking branch, the distant rush of a stream, made her heart quicken. Breath. Yet she pressed onward, driven by a quiet urgency she herself could not fully name. Tonight, she had felt the pull of something vulnerable, a life calling across the snow. Then she saw it, a small shape huddled against the roots of a frost-covered oak, barely moving. At first she thought it might be a shadow or a trick of the moonlight, but as she knelt closer her breath caught. Dees. A wolf pup, its fur matted and soaked with cold, shivered violently, its small body trembling against the snow. Its eyes wide and fearful met hers, and something inside Leora ached. Deaths. She had rescued many animals before, yet the depth of helplessness she felt now was almost unbearable. Desk, it's okay, little one, she whispered, moving carefully so as not to frighten it further. Her hands, red from the cold, reached out, and the pup recoiled slightly, letting out a soft, pitiful whine. Leora took her cloak off and gently wrapped it around the fragile creature, murmuring soothing words. She knew the forest could be merciless, and that even a few hours in the cold could be fatal for a young pup. Her instincts told her to leave, to avoid any danger that might come with taking in a wolf of unknown lineage. Stories told of packs that were fiercely loyal to their own, and of wolves with powers beyond the natural world, but compassion won. She lifted the pup close to her chest, feeling the rapid thrum of its heartbeat, and began the careful trek back toward her modest cabin hidden deeper in the woods. Every step was heavy, every sound amplified in the icy stillness. Leora thought she could hear her own heartbeat, a rhythmic echo that matched the soft, desperate whimpers of the pup. She imagined the warmth of a fire, the healing touch of her hands, and she pressed onward, ignoring the wind that threatened to cut through her very bones. Yet the forest did not remain silent for long. A howl, low and mournful, rose from somewhere distant but not far enough to be safe. It carried a weight that made Leora pause, her breath fogging in the cold air. The sound was neither wholly wolf nor wholly human, a haunting vibration that stirred something deep within her. The pup stiffened, its ears pressing back, and it whimpered again. Leora froze. "Stay close," she murmured, clutching the pup tighter. Her mind raced, picturing the legends she had heard as a child, the Alpha Kings of the North, rulers of cursed packs whose bloodlines were said to carry both human and wolf in equal measure. They were said to guard their territory with unyielding ferocity, and yet there was a tragic aura that surrounded them, stories of fathers searching for children lost to the harshness of the world. Another howl answered the first, closer this time. Leora's pulse quickened. The sound carried sorrow, power, and something else she could not name, an unspoken claim over the forest, as if it recognized the pup she held. And then, through the swirling snow, she saw them. Amber eyes glowing in the dim light pierced the storm. Breaths. A figure emerged, tall and commanding, moving with a grace that was both human and not. Cloaked in darkness yet emanating a strange magnetic power, the man stepped closer. The pup whimpered again and, against all instinct, wriggled toward him. Leora's heart leapt with both fear and curiosity. "Who are you?" she asked, though her voice trembled. The man's gaze fell upon her unflinching, a storm of authority and grief hidden behind amber eyes that seemed to glow with their own inner light. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he studied the pup, then her. Something in his stance suggested patience, yet there was no mistaking the warning in his presence. He was not to be trifled with. "I am Kalen," he said finally, his voice deep like rolling thunder softened by shadows. "Bay, that pup belongs to me." Leora stiffened, instinctive fear rising in her chest. "It's wounded." "It would have died if I hadn't found it." She lifted the pup slightly, showing its shivering form. "I couldn't leave it." Kalen's eyes softened for the briefest moment, and the wind seemed to pause around them. He knelt slightly, careful not to startle the pup, and studied its small form. "It has survived far longer than it should," he said, almost to himself. "You saved him, yet you do not know what you have done." Leora's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He looked back toward the darkened forest, the shadows seeming to stretch and twist around him. "There are forces in these woods, unseen and ancient, that guard those bound to my lineage. By saving this pup, you have awakened a tension you may not wish to face." Fear gripped Leora, but a part of her, the part that had always protected the weak and helpless, refused to step back. "I don't care. I couldn't let him die." Kalen's amber eyes met hers fully, piercing, studying. "You are brave or foolish. Perhaps both." He extended a hand toward her, not in threat but in a strange, silent acknowledgement of the courage it had taken to care for this fragile life. "Tell me your name, healer of the lost. I live nearby." "I can care for him." Kalen stood, the snow crunching under his boots. He studied her, the wind whipping around his cloak like living shadows. "You have a rare heart, Leora," he said. "Few would risk themselves in these forests for another life, no matter how small. Perhaps that is why the pup responds to you." The pup yipped softly, nuzzling into her chest, then lifted its head and let out a howl, low, trembling yet filled with recognition. Leora felt a chill run down her spine as Kalen's expression shifted, a flash of something unspoken passing over his features. It was sorrow, longing, and perhaps hope, all entwined in the depth of his amber eyes. "You saved more than a pup," he murmured. "Perhaps you have saved part of me, too." The word startled her, yet something warm unfurled in her chest. She had known grief, loss, and loneliness, but never had someone looked at her with such understanding. Still, fear urged her to speak. "What do you mean, part of you?" Kalen's jaw tightened. "I am searching for my son, lost to me years ago, taken in the chaos of the North. Every day I have carried his absence as a wound I cannot heal. That pup. It is tied to him in ways you cannot yet see. You have stepped into a story older than you know." Leora swallowed, uncertainty and awe twisting together. She looked down at the pup who had nestled into her cloak as if it had always belonged to her. And she felt a connection, fragile yet undeniable, not just to the pup, but to the man whose presence seemed to command both fear and fascination. "Do you looking for a child?" she asked quietly. Kalen's eyes darkened with shadowed memories. "Yes, my son. The world has been cruel to him. If he is alive, I will find him, and nothing will stop me." A gust of wind swept through the forest, carrying with it a whisper of voices, faint yet unmistakable, as though the forest itself was alive and listening. The pup whined again, pawing at the snow, then yipped toward the deeper woods. Kaelin's gaze followed the direction, and a spark of recognition flared in his amber eyes. "He is near," Kaelin said, voice tight with hope and fear. "But danger follows him. You have interfered with forces that do not forgive easily." Leora's hands tightened around the pup. "Then I'll help," she said, feeling a strange certainty blossom within her. "Whatever danger comes, I won't let him be hurt." Kaelin studied her, and for the first time, a small, rare smile touched his lips, softening the harsh lines of his face. "You may not yet understand what you have chosen," he said, "but it seems fate has chosen you for this path, Leora." The forest seemed to hold its breath. The wind slowed. The snow fell gently, almost reverently, around them. And then from the shadows of the trees beyond, a howl, unlike any Leora had heard, pierced the night, long, mournful, and full of warning. Kaelin stiffened, his eyes narrowing. The pup whimpered, ears pressed back, pawing at her coat, as if it knew something was coming. Leora's heart raced, but she did not let go. "We have no choice," Kaelin said, voice low and urgent. "The path forward begins tonight. Stay close, healer. Whatever comes, you must be ready." And in that moment, beneath the pale moon and the endless blanket of snow, Leora realized that the life she thought was her own, quiet and contained, had changed forever. She had saved a life in the cold, and in doing so had stepped into a story of power, sorrow, and longing, one that would demand courage she did not yet know she possessed. The howl echoed again, closer this time, carrying a promise of danger, hope, and a destiny intertwined with the Alpha King and the pup she had saved. And as the wind whispered through the frozen trees, Leora knew the night was only the beginning. The wind howled through the forest like a restless spirit, carrying with it a cold so sharp that even the bravest creatures shivered. Snow swirled around Leora and Kaelin as they moved cautiously through the trees. The pup, nestled in Leora's cloak, shivered but remained calm in her arms, its small warmth a fragile light against the vast cold. Every step Leora took seemed heavier than the last, fear and wonder entwined in her chest. She had never been so close to something so wild and powerful, and yet she could not deny the pull she felt toward the man walking beside her. Kaelin moved with quiet authority, his eyes scanning the shadows, amber orbs glowing faintly in the dim light. He rarely spoke, yet when he did, every word carried weight. He seemed older than his years, burdened with sorrow and responsibility, yet something about him drew Leora in, like a flame to moths. "The pup, it is unusual," Kaelin said finally, his voice low and steady. "It responds to me in ways most of my kind do not. It has been chosen by fate or by something older." "Perhaps both." Leora tightened her hold on the small creature. "I don't understand. How could a pup know you?"
"It's just a child like you said your son is. How could they be connected?" Kaelin's jaw tightened, and for a moment his face softened into something she almost mistook for sorrowful longing.
"Blood and spirits sometimes carry messages stronger than words. The pup has survived where others would have fallen. That tells me it is tied to my son, though I cannot yet see how." The forest seemed to react to his words. The snow fell thicker and shadows danced among the trees as if whispering secrets meant only for Kaelin. Leora shivered, unsure whether it was the cold or the presence of power that made the hairs on her arms stand. They moved in silence for a while, their path winding along frozen streams and through groves of frost-covered pines. Leora noticed the subtle changes in the forest, small signs that something unseen was watching. A branch quivering without wind, a shadow flickering just beyond sight, and always the soft whisper of the pup, as if it sensed the presence of its kin. Finally, Kaelin stopped, pressing his gloved hands to the snow. He looked down at Leora with an intensity that made her heart flutter. "We cannot stay in the open," he said. "The forces that follow my son are patient, relentless. They have watched from the shadows, waiting for any sign of him." Leora glanced at the pup, who let out a soft whine, pawing at her cloak.
"Then where will we go?" she asked. Aelin's gaze swept the forest.
"There is a place not far from here. Old stone, abandoned long ago, yet protected by magic older than my bloodline. We will take shelter there until we understand the path forward." They moved swiftly, Kaelen leading, his steps purposeful and sure. Leora struggled to keep up, but he never looked back to offer guidance beyond the occasional hand extended to steady her. The forest grew darker, thicker, the trees bending over them like guardians of a secret realm. Breath. And then, from the shadows, a sound emerged, a low growl, soft but deliberate. Leora froze, clutching the pup closer. Kaelin's stance shifted subtly, muscles tensing beneath his cloak. "It knows us," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Not all creatures in this forest are loyal. Some have been twisted by fear, hunger, or curses." The growl grew louder, echoing off the frost-laden trunks. A pair of glowing eyes appeared between the trees, unnaturally large, reflecting the moonlight. The creature stepped forward, and Leora realized it was a wolf, larger than any she had ever seen, its fur dark as midnight, eyes glinting with intelligence and malice. Kaelen moved in front of her, positioning himself like a wall between Leora and the threat. His amber eyes met the wolf's, and for a moment an unspoken conversation passed between them, a language older than words, one of dominance, heritage, and power. The wolf hesitated, then slowly backed away, fading into the shadows. "Not all here will be so easily deterred," Kaelen said grimly. "We must remain vigilant." They pressed on, finally arriving at a crumbling stone watchtower half buried in snow. Bale. Its walls were thick, weathered by centuries, and faint runes glimmered along the edges, a remnant of ancient magic. Kaelen approached carefully, muttering under his breath as he traced his fingers along the runes.
"The enchantments are still strong. They will protect us, at least for a time."
Inside, the air was cold, but still. The walls bore the weight of centuries, and the floor was dusted with frost. Leora set the pup down, who immediately padded to a corner, curling up for warmth. She ran her hands along the stone walls, feeling the echoes of magic in her fingertips. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Kaelin's gaze met hers, sharp yet unreadable. "Beauty can be deceptive," he said. "These walls were built to guard against threats older than any living memory. They are safe for now, but danger is never far." Night fell fully, and with it came silence. The forest outside seemed frozen, waiting. Leora prepared a small fire using dried wood she had carried, the flames flickering weakly but enough to bring warmth. Aelin sat near her, observing her carefully as she tended to the pup. "You have courage," he said after a long pause. "Few would face these forests alone, and fewer still would risk themselves to save another life." Precised. "I didn't think of it that way. I just couldn't leave him." Kaelin's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Compassion is a rare strength. Many see it as weakness. Phew. Few understand that it can change the course of fate." Leora felt a warmth she could not attribute to the fire alone. "Change fate?" she asked. "Yes," Kaelen replied. "You have done more than rescue a pup. You have shifted the threads of a story that has spanned years. The story of my son, of my family, of this forest. Every choice we make from this moment will ripple through what is yet to come." The pup stirred, whining softly, and nuzzled Leora's hands. Kalen observed, a subtle tension in his shoulders relaxing.
It recognizes you, he said quietly.
There is trust between you, though it is difficult to explain. You are linked now, and that bond will matter in ways we cannot yet see. But she dared not speak them. Instead, she focused on the warmth of the small creature in her hands and the strange sense of destiny that had wrapped around her life like a winter cloak. Hours passed. The fire flickered low, and outside the wind whispered across the trees. Leora dozed lightly, only half aware of Kalen's presence near the doorway, keeping watch. She felt him as much as she saw him, a constant, quiet force, alert and unyielding, yet strangely protective. And then came the sound, soft, almost imperceptible at first. A murmur through the stone walls. Leora stirred, eyes wide. Kalen's hand moved instinctively toward hers. He whispered.
It is only the forest, or perhaps something older. The pup senses it too.
The sound grew into a soft hum, vibrating through the stones. Leora watched the pup, who lifted its head, ears pricked, eyes fixed on the doorway, its body tensed as if listening to voices invisible to the human ear. Kalen rose, moving toward the door, his cloak swirling around him.
The forest watches.
The shadow follows. Soon, we will understand if it is friend or foe. Leora rose as well, feeling the stirrings of fear and courage in equal measure.
Death.
I am not leaving him, she said firmly, glancing at the pup. Kalen's eyes softened with something unspoken.
You do not have to. If you are willing, we face it together.
The shadows outside shifted, deeper and darker than before, curling around the stone watchtower like living smoke. A faint howl echoed from the distance. Not the pup's, not a normal wolf's, but something that carried grief, power, and warning in equal measure. Kalen's hand rested lightly on the hilt of his sword, though his gaze remained on Leora. That sound, it is him, he said, voice tight with both hope and dread. My son, he is near. And yet, danger comes with him. We must be ready to face what follows, together. Leora felt a tremor of fear, but also a surge of determination. The story she had stumbled into was larger than she had imagined, full of shadow, sorrow, and longing, breath. Yet the connection she felt, to the pup, to Kalen, to a destiny she did not yet understand, filled her with courage she had never known. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the snow falling softly around the ancient stones. The pup whimpered once, pawing toward the doorway, as if urging them forward into the unknown. Kalen turned to Leora, his amber eyes steady and commanding. The path begins tomorrow. We must follow the pup's lead. And you must be ready, for the forest does not forgive weakness. Leora nodded, clutching the pup closer. I am ready, she said. The fire crackled. The wind whispered, and the shadows waited outside. And in the stillness of the stone tower, 2 lives, one human, one alpha king, and a small, fragile creature, prepared to step into a destiny shaped by courage, compassion, and the bond between the lost and the found. The storm arrived without warning, sweeping across the forest with a howl that seemed almost alive. Snow whipped through the trees in blinding sheets, freezing everything it touched. Leora wrapped the pup tighter in her cloak, shivering despite the layers of wool and fur. The wind tugged at her hair and cloak, and each step through the deepening snow felt heavier than the last. Yet beside her, Kalen moved as though the storm were nothing, a steady presence against the chaos of the blizzard. The watchtower they had fled to the night before offered little protection against the storm. Its ancient stones shivered under the wind, and the faint runes carved along the walls glimmered with a subtle light, responding to the Alpha King's presence. Kaelin led her deeper into the tower's heart, where an old spiral staircase descended into a hidden chamber beneath the structure. "This place has held against time and magic," Kaelin said, his voice low, almost reverent. "It will keep us safe for now, though not for long. The forest does not forgive mistakes, nor does it easily forget trespassers." Leora set the pup down on the stone floor, where it padded nervously but stayed close to her. She knelt to examine its small body again. "He's strong," she whispered. "Stronger than I thought he'd be. But something about him feels different. Almost magical." Kylan's amber eyes flicked toward her, assessing. "You are not wrong," he said. "Bloodlines carry more than mere life. They carry power, memory, and in some cases, destiny. This pup is bound to my son in ways that even I do not fully understand." Leora's heart quickened. "Your son, is he near?" Kaelin's jaw tightened, and for a moment he was silent, staring into the flickering shadows. "Yes, but near does not mean safe. There are forces that would harm him, that would use him as a pawn in darkness older than the forest itself. And by finding this pup, by saving it, you have become part of this danger." She met his gaze, steady despite the fear curling in her chest. "I will not leave him, no matter what comes." Desk. Kaelin's expression softened slightly, though the shadow of caution remained. "Then we face it together." The storm outside intensified, and the chamber grew colder. Leora moved closer to the faintly glowing runes on the wall. They pulsed with a strange energy, reacting to Kaelin's presence as though acknowledging him. "What are these?" she asked, tracing a finger along the carvings. "Old magic," Kaelin said. "Older than my family, older than the forest. It protects this place, but it can also warn. Be still, and it will speak. Move rashly, and it can turn on you." Leora absorbed his words, a thrill running through her despite the cold. She had heard tales of magic, curses, and guardians of the wild, but this was different. She could feel the energy in the stones, subtle but persistent, like a heartbeat beneath the earth. Hours passed, and as the storm raged outside, Kaelin and Leora shared a tentative quiet. He taught her to read the faint patterns in the runes, showing her how they reacted to her touch, how they glimmered faintly when she whispered to the pup. "The bond you have with him is unique," Kaelin said, his voice almost soft. "It calls to the magic here in ways I cannot. That bond may be the key to finding my son safely." Leora felt a strange warmth at his words, a connection forming not just between herself and the pup, but also with Kaelin. She had seen grief, anger, and authority in him before, yet now there was a vulnerability he did not hide, and it drew her closer. "I want to help," she said quietly. "I don't know how, but I want to." Kaelin studied her, the amber glow of his eyes deep and unreadable. "Courage is one thing," he said, "but understanding the dangers, that is another. You may find yourself in places your heart is not ready for." The pup stirred at her feet, whining softly and then pawing toward a faint crack in the wall of the chamber. Leora knelt beside it, curious. She pressed her hand against the stone and felt a subtle vibration, almost like a pulse. "Kaelin, it's trying to tell us something." Kaelin approached, kneeling beside her. He laid his hand over hers, and for a brief moment she felt the warmth of his touch, both human and commanding, a silent reassurance in the cold chamber. "Yes," he said quietly. "The pup has seen the path. It knows where your steps must lead. We follow it, but carefully. Danger will be there, and it will not forgive hesitation." The night deepened. Leora tended to the pup, brushing its fur gently and murmuring calming words. Kalen watched her from across the room, his face inscrutable. Yet when he looked away, his expression softened, just enough for her to notice. In that moment, she saw the man beneath the Alpha King, grief-stricken, weary, and longing for something lost beyond his reach. Desk. Suddenly a faint sound carried through the chamber, a whisper, soft but distinct, like voices carried on the wind. The pup stiffened, ears perked, and Kalen's hand moved instinctively to the hilt of his sword.
It begins, he murmured.
The shadows in the corners of the room shifted, stretching and twisting unnaturally. Leora felt a shiver run down her spine. What is it? She whispered.
Something older than the forest, Kalen replied. Something that has followed my son for years, waiting.
It knows he is near. And now, it knows you are here. The pup growled softly, nuzzling against Leora's chest. Its small body quivered, but there was determination in its eyes, a silent courage that seemed to mirror her own.
Leora felt a swell of protectiveness.
We won't let it hurt him, she said firmly. Kalen nodded, a rare smile flickering briefly across his face. Bree, you are brave, Leora. More than I expected. The runes along the walls began to glow faintly, reacting to the tension, as though sensing the approaching danger. Kalen moved to stand guard near the doorway, eyes scanning the shadows. Leora followed instinctively, keeping the pup close. Hours passed in tense silence. Then a faint scratching sound came from the far corner of the chamber, followed by a low, almost human-like growl. Leora's heart raced, but Kalen's presence grounded her. He stepped forward, and the shadows shifted, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness, barely more than a shape.
You should not have come here, the figure whispered. Voice like ice.
The boy is mine, and soon all who protect him will fall. Leave now, he said, voice booming yet controlled. You will not take him, not while I breathe. The figure laughed softly, fading back into the shadows. The pup barked once, small but fierce, pawing at the floor as if ready to defend its charge. Leora felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. The danger was real, yet so was the connection between them. Her, Kalen, and the pup. Kalen returned to her side, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. This is only the beginning, he said. The forest is awakening. Forces long dormant will rise, and you will be tested in ways you cannot yet imagine. Leora met his gaze, determination shining in her eyes. I am ready, she said. For him, for the pup, for your son. Whatever comes, I will not back down. Kalen's expression softened, a shadow of the weary man beneath the Alpha King. Then we move together, he said. But remember, the path will demand courage, sacrifice, and trust. More than you may think you possess, the pup whined softly, and Leora knelt to stroke its fur. She felt the bond between them deepen, a thread of magic and fate weaving them together. Kalen watched silently, his presence a shield and a challenge all at once. Outside, the storm raged on, snow swirling in fierce gusts. The forest seemed alive, whispering warnings, beckoning them forward, testing their resolve. And within the tower, 3 lives, human, Alpha King, and pup, prepared to step into the darkness together, knowing that each choice they made could alter the fate of many. Hours turned into silence, punctuated by the wind's mournful song. Leora felt exhaustion tug at her limbs, yet a strange energy kept her alert, tethered to the pup, to Kalen, and to the invisible threads that guided their path. Finally, Kalen spoke, his voice low but steady. Tomorrow, we follow the pup. It knows the way to my son, but the shadows will be waiting. Remember this. Strength alone will not be enough. You will need courage, compassion, and a heart willing to face fear without faltering. Inspiration. Leora nodded, her resolve firm. She had already faced fear, risked herself for another life, and stepped into a story far larger than her own.
Now she would face what came next with the same courage, strengthened by the bond forming with Kaelin and the small creature that had started it all. The storm outside slowly began to ease, leaving the forest hushed under a blanket of snow. Yet even in the stillness, faint whispers lingered in the trees, warnings of trials ahead, promises of shadows and light intertwined. Leora closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth of the pup against her chest, the steady presence of Kaelin nearby, and the quiet pulse of destiny in the ancient stones beneath their feet. During magical night, one truth became clear. Nothing would be the same again. The journey to find Kaelin's son, to face the forces that hunted him, and to survive the forest's secrets had truly begun. The storm had passed, leaving the forest glistening under a pale dawn. Snow lay thick and unbroken, sparkling like a field of stars frozen on the earth. But beneath the beauty, the forest held its usual watchfulness. Every branch, every shadow seemed alive with magic. Leora tightened her cloak around herself and the pup, feeling the faint pulse of the little creature beneath her hands. It had grown stronger overnight, its small body now exuding quiet determination, as if it knew the path that lay ahead. Kaelin moved beside her, silent as always, his amber eyes scanning the distant horizon. The wind had carried whispers to him through the forest, faint echoes of the child he had sought for so long. His grip on the hilt of his sword was firm, but beneath it, a different kind of strength flowed, the strength of hope, fragile yet growing. "Pah, pah! The pup is leading us," Leora said softly, her voice barely rising above the whisper of the snow. "It knows where to go!" It senses my son. That is certain. But danger is closer than you realize. The forest does not give up its secrets easily. Forces older than the mountains themselves follow him. Leora felt a shiver run through her, but not from the cold. The thought of unknown dangers lurking in the snow-draped woods made her heart pound. Yet she refused to let fear rule her. Be sure, she had come too far, risked too much, to step back now. "We will face whatever comes," she said firmly. Together. Kaelin's eyes softened at her words, and for the briefest moment, the hard lines of his face relaxed. He had spent years alone carrying the grief of his lost son like a shadow, yet now, with Leora beside him and the pup as their guide, he dared to hope. The pup led them through narrow valleys and over frozen streams, its small paws leaving tracks in the snow that glimmered faintly with magic. Leora noticed that with every step the forest seemed to shift around them, branches bending as if to make way, shadows retreating, and faint lights flickering in the distance. The air itself seemed to hum with anticipation, carrying whispers that only those attuned to magic could hear. As they climbed a ridge, Kaelin paused, his amber eyes narrowing. "We are close," he said. "I can feel him." "My son is near." Leora knelt to the pup, feeling its small body vibrate with energy. Desk, it looked up at her, eyes shining with a strange intelligence. "Then we must hurry," she whispered, her hand brushing over its fur. They descended into a moonlit valley, a hidden place untouched by time. Frost-covered stones glimmered like silver, and ethereal lights floated above the ground, casting gentle patterns on the snow. Leora felt the air hum with magic, strong and ancient, yet not malevolent. Here, in this sacred place, the forest seemed alive in a way it had never been before, as though it were holding its breath for the moment of reunion. Suddenly, a sound pierced the stillness, a cry, high and pure, yet
trembling with fear. Leora's heart leapt. The pup barked, yipping excitedly, and ran ahead, leading them toward a cluster of glimmering frost trees. Kalen followed quickly, his steps purposeful and urgent. There, beneath the oldest tree in the valley, stood a boy. His hair was dark, tangled with frost, and his eyes wide with wonder and caution. The child froze as Kalen approached, yet there was recognition in his gaze, a spark that mirrored Kalen's own amber eyes. "My son," Kalen whispered, his voice breaking with a mix of relief, awe, and restrained emotion. "You are alive." The boy took a hesitant step forward, then another, until the pup ran ahead to meet him. The child knelt, allowing the small creature to nuzzle him, and the pup yipped with joy. Leora watched, feeling the warmth of life and reunion fill the frozen valley. Kalen stepped closer, kneeling before his son. He reached out, hand trembling slightly, and the boy hesitated, then placed his small hand in his father's. The connection was immediate, electric, a bond that had been broken by time and separation, now restored. "You have grown strong," Kalen said, his voice a mixture of pride and wonder. "Stronger than I could have imagined."
The boy looked at him, eyes shining with the innocence of years lost and the wisdom of experiences endured.
I was alone," he whispered. "But the forest, it kept me safe." Kalen's gaze swept the valley, noting the ethereal glow of magic in the air and the presence of forces unseen. "And you were never truly alone," he said. "This pup, and Leora," he added, turning his amber gaze toward her, "have kept you alive until I could find you." Leora felt a warmth in her chest at his words, a recognition of her courage and compassion. The journey had tested her in ways she had never imagined, and yet here, in the quiet glow of the magical valley, she felt that every risk had been worth it. The reunion was not without its tension. The shadows moved at the edges of the valley, curling and twisting with silent malice. Leora sensed them. The dark forces Kalen had warned her about, drawn to the boy's presence, drawn to the bond between father, child, and pup. Kalen stood, positioning himself between the shadows and his son, power. And the forest seemed to respond, the lights flickering brighter along the frost-covered stones. "You will not touch him," Kalen said, voice like rolling thunder. "Not while I breathe." The shadows hesitated, then surged forward, a wave of darkness that carried hunger and wrath. Leora's pulse quickened, but she did not step back. She knelt beside the pup, feeling its power resonate with hers, as though their bond could form a shield against the darkness. Together, Kalen and Leora faced the shadows. He moved with the grace and strength of the Alpha King, commanding not just the forest, but the air around him. A presence so powerful that even the darkness paused. Leora, guided by instinct and compassion, whispered words to the pup, reinforcing the magical connection that had begun to grow between them. The shadows surged, then faltered, recoiling from the combined strength of Kalen, the pup, and Leora's courage. The valley seemed to pulse with life, and the darkness retreated, curling back into the hidden corners of the forest, waiting for another moment, another opportunity. Kalen knelt before his son again, lifting him gently into his arms. The boy clung to him, warmth and trust spreading between them. Leora watched, feeling the threads of magic and fate settle around them, binding the three together in a protective embrace that even the forest seemed to honor. "You are safe now," Kalen whispered, voice trembling with relief. "No harm will come to you while I am here." The boy looked up at Leora, eyes shining. "And you?" he asked softly. "Are you safe too?" "Yes," she said, feeling the truth of her words. "Because we face this together." Kalen's gaze met hers, amber and golden in the morning light. For the first time, the hard lines of the Alpha King softened completely.
"You have done more than save a life," he said. "You have changed it, all of our lives." The pup barked softly, circling them in joy.
Its small presence was no longer just a fragile life needing protection. It was a symbol of trust, courage, and the bond that had led them to this moment. The sun began to rise, casting gentle light over the valley, painting the snow in shades of gold and pink. The shadows had retreated, the danger lingering only at the edges. But for now, peace had returned. Leora knelt in the snow, brushing her fingers along the frost-covered stones, feeling a deep sense of connection to the forest, the pup, and the Alpha King's family. Kaelin stood beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "The forest will always watch us," he said. "But together, we are stronger than any shadow. You have brought light to a darkness I thought would never end." Leora's chest swelled with quiet pride and gratitude. Bay sang no wounded pup, but it had led her here, to courage, to magic, to the restoration of a family torn apart by time and fate. The boy tugged gently at Kaelin's cloak, and the Alpha King knelt once more, gathering him into his arms. "We will return," Kaelin said softly. "But the forest will always hold a part of our story. And perhaps it will teach us more about who we are meant to be." The pup nuzzled Leora's hand one final time, and she felt a warmth spread through her, a reminder that even the smallest acts of courage could ripple outward, changing destinies. The valley fell silent again, but this silence was different. It was the quiet of hope, of bonds forged through trial, of love and trust renewed. Kaelin looked at Leora, then at his son, and finally at the pup, and for the first time in many years he allowed himself to imagine a future not shadowed by grief or loss. Leora met his gaze, and the understanding passed between them. Courage, compassion, and loyalty had brought them through darkness, and now the bonds of frost and fire had been forged stronger than ever. The forest whispered around them, snow glittering in the first light of day. Shadows still lingered, always watching. But for now the threat was held at bay. Kaelin's son smiled at the pup, Leora by his side, and Kaelin knew that even in a world of magic and peril, redemption, hope, and love were powerful forces, enough to endure any darkness. And in that quiet, shining valley, 3 lives, a healer, an Alpha King, and a child of lost destiny, began their new story together, bound by courage, trust, and the quiet magic of connection.